Welcome back, everybody. So we are talking about the Shayna Hubers case. How could we not? This is such a remarkable case. You never really see this kind of case before. It's so unique. We're talking about a retrial of a woman who was already convicted and sentenced to 40 years for killing her boyfriend. His name was Ryan Poston. But she's getting a second shot at the apple because one of the jurors in that first case was a convicted felon who didn't release that information on his jury questionnaire. So that was declared a mistrial. She's getting a second trial. And this new trial is really different from the first trial, including the fact that Shayna Hubers, that woman you see smiling right there with her attorney, took the stand. And she explained what happened the night that she shot Ryan Poston. So what I want to do for you, in case you missed it, is I want to play you some of her testimony right now. And she's about to talk about how Ryan, her boyfriend, treated her when they went out together. So let's find out a little bit more about their relationship.
How did Mr. Poston treat you when you all were out together?
Ryan and I were both, you wouldn't know it to look at us. We were both thin people, but we both loved to eat. And we went out to eat all the time. Ryan took me out, especially in 2011, to eat often. I can't tell you how many restaurants we went to. And oftentimes in public, sometimes in public, he was nice to me, but sometimes when it was just him and I at a restaurant, he would pick on me and belittle me and bully me in front of strangers. And it could be for something as small as how I was eating my food. The way that I chewed my food bothered him. He said I smacked my gums and it embarrassed him. And he would pick on me in front of the other people at the restaurant for smacking my gums. He also would pick on me for anything, just the smallest of things. It would be right in front of people, and sometimes it would get a little loud, and the other customers in the restaurant would look over, and it would just feel very humiliating and degrading.
Okay. Now, you got back together at some point in July, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
Do you recall? Do you recall communications with Mr. Ryan about what would be necessary for you to continue to have a relationship with him?
Oh, okay. Well, when we got back together in July of 2012, I felt Ryan put conditions on the relationship. He said he wanted an exclusive relationship, and he labeled that as non-touching of other girls and guys, but that he wanted me to be his incognito girlfriend, and he wanted me to talk 25% less. He always said I talked too much, and he wanted me to get a hobby while I was at his condo, and he also wanted me to agree to have threesomes with other girls.
Did you all communicate about that via text communications?
Yes, sir, and in person.
What else did he want you to do?
He still wanted me to get the G-shot injection, and he wanted me to... I wasn't allowed to ask him about how his day went. He said I wasn't allowed to ask him about how his day at work went because at the end of the day, he felt like the day was so bad. He used the expression, he literally wanted to put his fist through the wall.
Okay. This is some pretty incredible stuff, listening to the defendant herself. And yes, what you just heard was correct. According to her, Ryan Poston wanted her to get a special injection that would help her get an orgasm because she couldn't get one. This orgasm defense is something that's hit the headlines constantly. But I want to talk a little bit more about it here with Rachel. Rachel?
Yeah.
Okay. You could say he's the worst boyfriend. You could say he didn't want to speak to her, he wanted her only for sex, all this.
Right.
It doesn't really justify a killing. So people could hate him,
right,
but it doesn't justify what she did.
Yeah, I mean, I think what she's describing is, I mean, it might be stuff, quite frankly, I bet there are many women in New York City that would say they've heard similar things from their boyfriends as for what they want them to do or participate in. I don't think what she's describing is an abused wife. I don't think it raises to that level of being an abused girlfriend physically or mentally. He might have been a jerk, but it's also a fine line because, he's dead and his family is likely sitting in that courtroom. And you have to be very careful about her sitting there kind of making him out to be this jerk unless it rises to that level of physical and mental anguish that's going to justify, what she ultimately did.
She didn't take the stand in her first trial. She is now. Why?
I mean, first of all, she's got nothing to lose, right? The first time she didn't take the stand and got found convicted and got 40 years. And the only reason that was overturned was it was a juror issue. It wasn't really a legal problem in the case or anything like that. So really, what does she have to lose? We know that she was found guilty not testifying, so let's give it a shot. I think, the way she's carrying herself is not great. I would imagine that her attorney would also like her to talk 25% less. I mean, even the way she's sort of shifting in the chair and kind of like twisting her seat.
Isn't that good? It shows she's more conversational. She doesn't have stock answers. She's actually saying what she thinks.
It also shows she's like really comfortable with the whole thing, which I think also kind of plays into, remember, this is the case that has the video of her, in the police station singing and acting odd and all that. So, I mean, I think it does play into this sort of coldness and strangeness that is part of the underlying kind of mood of this case and of this prosecution.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you. It is very strange, but fascinating to watch nonetheless. Let's play some more of her testimony, and this is when she talks about Ryan and him having guns. Remember, he was shot with one of his guns in the apartment. Let's find out.
Is there any occasion where he ever pointed a gun at you?
Yes, sir.
Before October, I'm not talking about October 12th. Tell us about that.
It was one of the times he was playing with guns in the house and shooting at his target. This time, I believe the target was in a different location, not right up against the master bedroom, but closer to the TV. And he pointed the gun at his target and then pointed it at me. And I didn't think it was funny. I didn't think it was a joke. And I think to him it was a joke.
How did that affect you?
That really terrified me. And I told him I didn't like it, or I didn't think it was safe, or that it could cause something bad to happen that he didn't mean to.
Did you and Mr. Poston go to a shooting range together?
In early October, yes.
Okay. And did you communicate with Christy Orr about that?
Yes, sir.
And did you indicate, what did you communicate to Mr. Orr about that?
I told her that we were going to the range together.
Did you send her a picture of you at the range?
I'm not sure if I sent her the picture or if I sent the picture to someone else.
Okay. Did you communicate to her anything about Mr. Poston at the range?
Yes, I made an ill-humored joke that's no longer funny, and it's been taken out of context and made into something it's not.
What did you have any intention of wanting to shoot Mr. Poston?
It wasn't meant seriously. I tend to have a dark sense of humor, as do some of my friends, and the text was not meant seriously, no.
We have to understand what her defense is. So if you look at the statute, Rachel, there's a thing called extreme emotional disturbance, that she may not be found guilty if they feel that at that moment there was an extreme emotional disturbance. What's the jury supposed to make of that? Okay, so she wasn't treated right. You know, she was a victim of sexual abuse when she was younger. And by the way, we have nothing to verify that. It's only from her words.
Right.
Let's take all that into consideration, figure what would somebody have done in that exact moment. But at the crime scene, there's no evidence of a struggle like she claims. So I think she's confusing the jury. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it just, as I said before, I just don't think it's rising to the level that the defense needs it to rise to. You know, the things she's describing, I think, you know, taken individually, most jurors have probably had some experience with these things individually, with dating someone, with being, I mean, she's not describing anything that shocks the conscience, that would, you know, lead somebody to be in fear for their life. Or, plus she stayed with him and kept going back to him. I mean, they weren't married, they didn't have children, she's not stuck, she wasn't relying on him for money. You know, so this whole, they're kind of trying to use a battered wife defense without her being a battered wife. And I mean, I think she doesn't have a lot to lose in giving it a try and testifying. The other thing, what we're seeing there is, you know, having the benefit of knowing how that first trial turned out, the defense is trying to sort of diffuse some of the things that were bad for her in the first trial, like this whole issue with having gone to a gun range and her making a bad joke. He's trying to diffuse that and use her testimony for that purpose.
Isn't it dangerous to attack the victim in any case and say that he is the one who was an aggressor, he was the one who was violent, he was the one who's sexually abusing her, because he's dead. She admitted to shooting him and putting him out of his misery.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is really what's at stake here is, you know, don't forget his family is likely sitting in that audience, the jurors are seeing them, I'm sure they're not happy about this. Yeah, the victim blame is really dangerous, and unless you've got something that really rises to that level, or she can convey it in such a way, you know, I just don't think personally as an observer that she's coming off like an abused person who I'm going to feel sympathy for. And so you're right, triggering that kind of go against the victim thing is really dangerous here.
And I wonder real quick, if we didn't see any of the text messages, any of her police interview, would they have looked at that testimony differently?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think that it flows into the prosecution's theory, unfortunately, of who she is, of this sort of cold, kind of odd person, and it flows into that. She is, the way she's presenting herself doesn't do her any favors. Yeah, well, it's fascinating to watch. It really is, and we are lucky because today on Law and Crime, we're not only just going to be covering that case, but we're also going to be covering the Roy Oliver case. And in that case, the defendant took the stand also. So we have two defendants taking the stands in separate cases, and we get to analyze both of them. We'll be right back.